announcements, and then I'm going to turn the program over to Reena and Jerry. But I want to thank the Mississippi Center for Investigative Journalism, the Mississippi Book Festival, our friends and partners at Lemuria for co-sponsoring this event. I mainly just wanted to take a moment to, again, thank Jerry for all the work that he did, not just in writing this book, but the work that went into it beforehand. So much journalism, so much good journalism took place that brought these cases to light and led to justice that I think no one ever would have expected to be found, at least, recently. So thank you for doing that, and thank you also for writing this marvelous book, which has now just come out in paperback. And I'm going to turn the program over to Reena Evers-Everette, our host, and to Jerry, our guest. Thank you so much.
Yeah. There you go.
So actually, I'm going to say hello to everyone, but the positions are reversed. Jerry Mitchell is actually going to be our host. And I just have to say thank you to my friend Jerry Mitchell for inviting me for today, and Lemuria and Square Books.
It's great. It's great. It's always great to be with you. And, it's always great when I get to put you on the hot seat and ask you some questions. So,
You love that.
yeah, that's exactly. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
But let's talk a little bit about your dad. I'm going to try to get through this because not everybody knows everything about your dad. And there are a lot of things that are unknown about your dad that people should know. But your dad was born in Decatur, which, is not too far. Mississippi, yes. Not far from Meridian. And which Decatur, by the way, is 1 mile square, which I thought was a very fascinating detail. And then, but the family owned their own property, which was very, yeah, right. And that was kind of unusual for African-American families at that moment in time. Or if they did have property, it got, somehow taken away, or all those other kind of things. And so, which gave him a degree of independence. And then, of course, he fought in Normandy. He was also part of the Red Ball Express in War II. Came home, and on his 21st birthday in 1946, he and your uncle, Charles, tried to go vote and got turned away.
About 5 other
Yeah, exactly. Some other black veterans from World War II all tried to go vote, got turned away. White men with guns, essentially.
I don't know about turned away, but
threatened. Basically, if you vote, we're going to see to it you don't leave the voting booth.
And
so
according to my uncle and to my mother's recollection of what my father said, that will never ever happen again.
Yeah, never be whipped again.
Right.
That's what he said.
Right.
Yeah. And then he attended Alcorn, where he met your mama, your mother, who was a freshman. And they married, and then he began to sell insurance for somebody that people should know that maybe don't know is Dr. T.R.M. Howard, who was like Mississippi's biggest civil rights leader at the time in the 50s. And also, you have a connection to him. What?
Well, okay, let me go back a little bit.
No, please do.
Because
I left out stuff.
No. It's just that I got to tell you some of my favorite parts of my parents' story.
Please do.
And that is when they met.
Yes. Tell that story.
At Alcorn A&M.
Yes.
And my mother is the only child.
Right.
And she was raised by her aunt and her grandmother on her father's side.
Right.
And so, at that time, you are told what to do, what not to do, kind of this time too, but more so then.
Yeah,
and my grandmother stressed to my mother, there's a lot of veterans, don't get hooked up with any of those. Well, she didn't say hooked up. Don't don't get together with any of those veterans. And so it's the first day that she goes on campus, and there's the freshman orientation group that's walking around, and they stop in the center court of the campus, and all of a sudden they hear this noise that sounded like cattle. Now, Alcorn is agricultural and mechanic, so there's farms and all kind of stuff going on. And so that's what they thought it was until they turned around, and it was a football team that was coming and going through practice. And that's how, not necessarily they met, that's how my father introduced himself to my mother.
Exactly.
Because she was leaning up against a pole, and he came up to her and said, "You better get off of that pole, you might get struck by lightning." And she kind of was flippant, which is kind of her style anyway. And she's like, "You can't tell me what to do with myself." And so he was intrigued by that. And yeah, she's funky. She's funky. But he was really intrigued by her intellect and her determination to make things better for her. And her goal was to be a concert pianist.
Yeah, and
So
she got to do that. I mean,
she did later. Well,
I guess we can talk about it if we have time later. We'll talk about that at Carnegie Hall.
But that's how they met, and I'm glad they met because
You would be here.
I wouldn't be here, or if I was. But and so going to Mount Bayou, and you asked me about that.
He worked for Dr. Howard. He sold insurance.
He worked for Dr. Howard, but what I would love people to do is really look into Mount Bayou.
It's a fascinating town.
It was the Black Mecca.
Yes, it was.
During that time of the very rich colored people. So Dr. T.R.M. Howard heard about my father simply because my father on campus before he graduated was always trying to promote entrepreneurship, but trying to promote the right to vote because of what happened. And so Dr. Howard heard about him and offered him a job to come up to the Delta. And Dr. Howard was an entrepreneur, and he was a medical doctor. And he delivered my brother Daryl Kenyatta Evers, who is 15 months older than I am, and he delivered me. So I'm happy to be associated with Dr. Howard because of what he did.
Yeah, he was very fascinating.
You know, because he was a serious, very, my father was very similar to Dr. Howard in his determination and his seriousness to make sure that equality was really at the forefront, and that everyone understood it and that they got educated on what their rights were.
And Dr. Howard, the rest of the story is he got run out of Mississippi along with your uncle, and they both went to Chicago. But your dad refused. Like he stayed. He wanted to make a difference and stay loved.
Well, no.
He became.
He loves, and I say still that. He loves Mississippi.
Yeah.
And wanted to make Mississippi the best place possible. So he decided to fight for it.
He stayed. And of course, he applied to try to enroll at Ole Miss Law School and got turned away because of his color. And then went and talked to NAACP about, possibly bringing litigation. Of course, there had already been this whole series of cases before the U.S. Supreme Court along those lines, various University of Missouri, University of Oklahoma, for grad schools. And but they liked him so much, they offered him a job. Which says quite a bit about your dad.
Well, they offered him
Right.
And so they like that. They also like the way that he's extremely articulate, level-headed. Uh, I say that because I hear it not at all times, but level-headed.
Yep.
And it was a wonderful strategist.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so because of that, then ACP
right.
said, we would like you to be the first Mississippi field secretary.
Exactly. He was. And he kind of put, what, 40,000 miles a year on his Oldsmobile, more.
And you know what, Jerry, I did not realize how many miles he put on it until you actually uncovered that
Yeah.
and let us know that.
Yeah,
I didn't
yeah.
think about it. But I tell you, when I was just recently, this past week, I was up in the Delta, and every time I go around the state, but especially up in the Delta, I think about my dad, and I think about the roads, and I think about
Oh, yeah.
how the roads are now as compared to how they were, and the cars that he actually purchased to get around the state during the time of hunting season was nonstop for coloreds and Negroes at that time.
Right.
And so it's just, it amazes me.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And you know, your dad was, you know, this vision of your dad, you know, doing 100 miles an hour, sometimes down those dirt roads, being chased. And I've got the description of the book of kind of that, because I went back and found the detail. I actually found out the detail on the exact Oldsmobile that your dad owned. And if it went over, which sounds kind of incredible today, because we don't think anything about going over 60 miles an hour, but back then that was a big, 50s, it was a bigger deal. But literally, the speedometer would begin to glow red after it went over 60. So I just had this vision of your dad driving down the road in the dark, you know, speeding in the darkness, and this dashboard glowing red while he's, you know, being chased.
With the dust going up.
Exactly.
And
you know,
that's
I mean, I can't say enough about your dad's courage and bravery, and your mom for letting him do it. You know, to be honest with you. And,
giving him do it.
well,
Just
maybe.
That's like someone told me that my father allowed my mother to do certain things.
Yeah, that's probably
I
true.
just really want to be clear to everybody that hears this. They were two very independent.
Oh, there's no question about that.
Independent, strong-willed individuals that came to a compromise with their life and how it was going to be. It wasn't always easy, but they never fought in front of us. I heard.
They didn't fight.
They didn't fight in front of us.
Oh, okay.
Okay, that's the key. But they did. You know, it wasn't that they never fought, but they had heated discussions.
Absolutely. So tell me about. So you grew up in Jackson, for the most part. I mean, your earliest memories, I've seen in Jackson.
Right. I was.
You're a baby. You were
when,
like a baby when y'all moved.
When we moved to Jackson, and
so what was that like growing up on what they call Guyan Street?
Guyan Street.
Yeah. What was it like?
It was fun. It was one of the best neighborhoods. And at times one of the worst, because everybody looked after everyone's kids.
Right.
And so when you thought you were getting away with something, you were not. And sometimes the neighbors got you before your parents got you.
Oh, no.
And then my mom was not a mother that said, just wait till your father got home.
No, she took care of you right there.
She took care of business right then and there. And then she said, wait till your father
got home. Got it twice.
And, you know, my father didn't have to put a hand on us, even though he did it once for me, which broke both of our hearts. And it was like this. And it just broke both of our hearts. But all come in and hear about it, and he would give us a certain look, and we would just be devastated.
Right.
To have him be upset at us was just devastating.
About your dad, so it's so interesting you told this story before about your dad would actually come outside with the kids. But talk about that.
My father was like the Pied Piper because he loved children.
Yeah.
And so I tell people go, well, do you remember your father? I'm like, okay, at age 8.5, almost 9, do you remember things yourself? So if that's the case, I do.
Yeah.
And I have really, really, really great memories. And then I have a few that are just devastating.
Right.
But my father would, more times than not, be at home Saturdays.
Right.
And Sundays, more times than not. And on Saturdays, of course, outside work, okay. But once we finished, or he finished the outside work, and all of the neighborhood kids would come and flock to him and say, Mr. Evers, let's go. So my brother and all of the young men would get on the bikes or run, okay, thinking that they're gonna outrun this man. All right, and he would give everybody a head start, and we lived up at the kind of a bottom of the hill, and he would just surpass them every time because he's also an athlete.
Actually, he was a star.
Okay, he was a star in track and football. So, but it was, he always played with us. He always did hide and seek, and he always did exercises with us, with Jack LaLanne.
Oh, cool.
In front of the TV. I remember that.
And what about music?
Okay, music was constant at our house.
Yeah.
And so Dad and I always used to twist.
Oh yeah,
So
play the twist.
Yeah.
Single, yeah.
So
hey, did you have your little record player, the 45s?
Of course.
Yeah.
No, 78s.
Oh, the 78s.
78s.
Yeah.
And then 45s came.
Yeah. Yeah. I got you.
Yeah.
I had 45s. I don't remember the 78s.
You're younger than I am.
Yeah. So, and then he would bring you home treats once in a while, right? What would he bring you?
Well, my father did travel, not just up and down the state of Mississippi, but across the nation.
Yeah.
And so we would always, Daddy, bring us something home. Bring us something home, okay?
Of course.
So it'd be souvenirs, but more importantly, it'd be food souvenirs.
Right.
And I don't know what is it about both of my parents, but they like strange food, okay?
Right.
And I say strange food because my father would bring us chocolate-covered raisins. I'm sorry, not chocolate-covered raisins. My favorite. Chocolate-covered ants.
We like to bring
Fire ants.
Fire ants. Oh
Yes.
boy, how tasty!
Okay. Yes. They were spicy.
Yeah, I bet they were.
Yeah. But he would bring us all kind of different things. So, we grew up with different things.
That's fascinating.
Snake
and everything else.
Yeah.
So you have this kind of idyllic childhood, really, in a lot of ways.
Yes.
And from a child's perspective,
I would say that
perspective.
we were not in knowing that we needed anything.
Right.
We wanted anything. Except for Dad to be home more. But I tell you, the time that we knew, we just knew my father talked to us, not like we were little bitty kids. He talked to us, and he brought us into saying, this is what's going on. We might not have grasped all of the full meaning.
Sure.
But we understood when people came over that there was going to be a meeting, and sometimes it was loud and sometimes it was heated, but it was all about the betterment, right? And equality for color, Negro, African American, Black. And the thing about my father is that he always wanted you to understand what to do.
He had a game actually that he had for you
Yeah.
and your brothers. And what was that?
Well, my father's game was to find the safest place in the house. And he went through telling us things that you don't do. You don't stand up in front of a window at night.
Right.
You don't hear things. He taught us different sounds. So the difference between a car that's backfiring and a gun that's being fired. Listen out for what might be around your house, the noises, someone outside, do you hear leaves cracking, do you hear a window? Always use all your senses.
Right.
And really tap into that sixth sense,
And then the night that, changed everything.
The night that will forever be dashed. No matter when it's brought up, especially during the month of June.
Yeah.
It was the night that you felt there's difference in the air. We were followed more that day because we had been followed before. We knew that. That was part of the training from my father, is to understand how things go, to go different routes if you feel like you're being followed, all that. And so he wanted us to go to this last mass meeting. And that was when he said he would give his life and he'd give it gladly if it would make a world a better place for his wife and his kids. And it did. But that night was also the night that President Kennedy gave his famous speech about the slaves, the grandsons of slaves. Exactly. And so my father wanted us to see that. So he told my mother to make sure we stayed out. And he was going to come home.
Right.
So we came home and we heard drive-bys. And now that's interesting that I say it because when my own children were growing up and we were in California, it was coined drive-bys,
Right.
And so I told them, I said, let me tell you what a real drive-by is and what happens. This is not a new phrase. This is something that happened in your family's life. But what happened is that we watched it. My mother, we were in my parents' bedroom, and that was at the front of the house. And my mother was laying across the bed with my youngest brother, Van, who was 3 at the time. And Daryl was really almost 10, and I was almost 9. And we got to stay up because we wanted to see Daddy, and we got to see the Untouchables.
Right.
And so we were watching Elliot Ness catch all the bad guys. And we heard Daddy's car. And he said, Daddy's home, Daddy's home. And my mother kind of stirred. And then we heard the gunshot. And we were part the way on the floor already. But then we did exactly what my father taught us. We fell flat. And my mother jumped up, which is what she wasn't supposed to do.
Right.
And she yelled out and started running down the hallway.
Right.
And Daryl and I did what we were taught to do, to grab Van and crawl to the bathroom. Right. And crawl inside the bathtub. Right. But then my mother started screaming and screaming and screaming. And we left Van in the bathtub and we ran.
Right.
And Dad had come out of the car on his side, which was not the side he was supposed to come out, because he and Mom agreed that he'd come home at night. That's a clear shot.
Right.
And
because there was explain to people, there was like a vandal, like a lot there. There was no house there.
right on the
Woods
street,
there. Yeah.
on the street, we were on the north side, and then on the south side there was a house
Yeah, there was
right
a house.
in front of us.
Yeah.
But then there was another street over that had some houses, but then there was a big lot that was thicket
Exactly.
where we used to pick blackberries and stuff like that. And so that's where Beckwith
Yeah. big
was.
fire truck.
And Dad had pulled himself around to the bottom of the porch. It was in his own blood, holding T-shirts that said Jim Crow must go, because there was a campaign that was getting ready to happen next day. So Daryl and I ran to Dad and just told him to get up, get up, get up, Daddy, get up, get up, get up, get up. I mean, he's our hero. He was strong. He always lifted weights, and he was a strong man. And to find out the size of the hole that was in his back, and the bullet that created it and exploded it out. It's amazing that he survived as long as he did. But he winked at us. I mean, so we knew that he was looking at us. And our neighbor, Mr. Wells, came out, started shooting up like a fire, like a
Morning shot.
Right.
Scares someone off.
Yeah, that I'll never forget that scene, but I'll never forget the sound of scream constantly. And that's the first time I ever heard my mother curse. And a lot of people, ones were the neighbors, because they wouldn't let her go to the hospital.
Right. They wouldn't let her go with
Yeah.
your dad.
And it's just, that was hard.
And I know we only have limited time, so
Yeah.
I'm skipping forward now to the trial. And so,
You mean when I met you?
yeah, there were two trials that obviously you
Before
were-
that, yeah.
before that, back in
Yeah.
'64, and hung juries in both those.
Right.
So Beckwith went home and welcomed as a hero and given a free steak dinner and all these kind of other disgusting things. And then came the trial in '94, the third trial. So Anyway, any
thoughts about
any
that
thoughts
trial?
about that trial?
Well, I tell you, even before that trial happened.
Yeah.
I would like for you
Sure.
to,
We can talk.
to say about what you did to get that trial started.
Well, I wrote about the Sovereignty Commission. Weirdly enough, I got obsessed with this state segregation and spy agency that were all these files. And as I always tell people, there's 132,000 pages of files. And I always tell people, if someone tells me I can't have something, I want it like a million times worse. You know, it's the worst thing to tell a reporter. So that's what it was. I mean, to be honest, that's what I was after. It's like, oh, I want all those secret documents that nobody else has. So that was one of them, that was a report on your dad. And to be honest, if I'm totally honest, I really knew very little about your father. And so I get this, you know, find out about this, report about this, and have the document. And you probably remember I shared it with your mom.
Yes.
And who shared it with you at the time?
We shared it with my brothers and I.
Yeah, and you guys kind of talked about, because I asked, when I asked your mom, was, do you think the case should be reopened? That was my question.
What did she answer?
Yes, it should.
Did she give you that a quick answer?
No, she actually told me. I don't remember if she told me she was going to talk to you, but I knew that's what
Right.
happened. Yeah.
She wasn't sure because of the first two trials.
And so what
took
did
a
you
lot.
think? So what
Took
did
a
you
lot.
think at that time? What was
So
your thinking?
when she called us and she said we all need to be on the phone, and she said that a young reporter.
That pesky young little pesky
She
reporter.
called you pesky later.
Yeah, exactly.
But
Yeah,
she
yeah.
said a young reporter had found some information that might happen, and she laid some of it out. And
I sent her my story. I think
Right.
we had faxing by that point, or some.
yes,
I think I faxed it. to
yes,
her, if I
you did.
recall correctly.
And she still prefers the next. But yes, and so the three of us were in different areas, but we were all very protective of her.
Oh yeah.
And we didn't want her to go through the pain again.
Right. Exactly.
We were going through pain, but we didn't want my mom
Right.
to go through it. But we all wanted justice. But we wanted to know what can be done, really,
Yeah.
to get that done.
What do you think?
So what was brought into place also was that dad would have to be exhumed.
Yeah, that was a little.
And that was a heavy duty
Oh yeah.
discussion.
Yeah, because they couldn't find the original autopsy report, and they really needed an autopsy report. So your youngest brother, actually, Van, was the one who actually went
Yeah.
With Dr. Michael.
That was a heated discussion because we all wanted to be there.
Exactly. I'm sure it was.
But the thing that was interesting and that we all agreed, Van was 3.
Yeah, he did.
Okay. And he said these words. He goes, "You were able to know dad.
And
I need to know my dad."
and
And God was so good
yeah,
because when he flew to DC, from DC undercover, they got dad out,
right.
drove into New York,
Right.
went to Dr. Bodden, got that. And Van is a professional photographer.
Right.
So he brought his own pictures and he said,
Right.
you take pictures, right? No matter which state, you take pictures.
Right.
And we tried to prepare him, it might not be, so we want to make sure
30
you're
years,
right.
you don't know what you're going to find, right?
But the pictures that came, and he called us just crying and said, I got to speak with dad. And he showed us the pictures. Dad had hair.
He had
hair. He looked like it maybe a month.
Yeah, I was gonna say it looked like 3 weeks instead of 3 decades.
Exactly. And we
That's
just
amazing.
all cried.
Wasn't
and said,
miracle,
thank you.
you know?
Yeah, just
Really
thank you for bringing a sense of belonging
Yeah.
to both of them,
Right.
and to see your dad the way he really is at your age now.
Yeah, that's what was amazing. His van was almost the exact same age as your dad when he died. So
Exactly.
how
So
fascinating.
it was good. It was hard, but it was good, and they got the information they
Yep,
needed.
they did.
Plus, you had to go ahead and you went and did so much, Jerry. And so tell them about where you found
Well, I wouldn't talk.
There were 3 things that were needed, right?
Well, the transcript your mom had.
Mom had that.
And she shared it
did
with me.
not have anything.
Yeah, she shared it with me.
Right.
A copy with me. And then she gave the original to the district attorney's office. And then I went and interviewed Byron Beck with, of course, the killer himself, which was an interesting experience. And I'll share that real quick for those who aren't familiar with it. But I went and interviewed him. He lived, this is April of 1990. I went and interviewed him. Absolutely most racist person that I was spending serious time with. It was like inward this, inward that. And he started in all the other, no, he was an equal opportunity racist. He was hating all the other non-white racists. And just, you get some people, you get done with you get done talking to them, you feel like you need to go get a bath. And that's what it felt like with. And so I got done talking to him. It was getting dark, and I thought it was a good time to go. And he walked me out to the car and actually kind of blocked my way to the car. Well, he insisted on walking me out, and I'm like, really? That's okay. He walked me out anyway. Got in front of me, took me in the car door, and it's like, if you write positive things about white Caucasian Christians, God will bless you. If you write negative things about white Caucasian Christians, God will punish you. God does not punish you directly. Several individuals will do it for him. And so.
And you also got a parting gift from his wife.
Yeah, his wife gave me a sandwich. I think you can guess what I did with the sandwich after that comment.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to hang on to that baby.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was fascinating. It was fascinating. And then, of course, he didn't realize that I was the one that wrote the story to get the case reopened, which is the other part of the equation. So fast forward, he gets arrested and extradited, brought back to Mississippi. By now, he figured it out.
Yeah, because he was at Signal Hill, right?
Yeah, Signal Mountain, Signal Mountain in Tennessee, and so he's back in Mississippi. He responds to me across the courtroom and says, "You see that boy over there? When he dies, he's going to Africa." And so, anyway, fascinating,
Yeah,
fascinating experience, Reena. Well, talk about the trial. I mean, any thoughts on the trial?
The trial, my mother really kind of wanted to be there.
And you were there, and your brother Daryl was there.
Daryl and I came. Daryl came first, and then I came. Raising a family and trying to make sure all that got coordinated. But we got there. Van couldn't get there at that time.
Yeah, it was time at that time.
Yeah, and but it was just amazing. As I drive into the court. By the court now, it takes him back every time because there were snipers on top of the buildings. We were in a hotel that we had the whole floor taken with just FBI and us.
Wow.
It was interesting, and a film that was done later on, Ghost of Mississippi. Didn't want to portray that because they said people would think it would be too Hollywood.
Really?
But with that, I have to say this because I know time is.
We're getting close to you.
Is that Jerry Mitchell? Thank you very much for all that you've done for our family, for all that you've done for so many families with the cold cases. Over how many now?
Well, I didn't have anything to do with all these, but to date now there have been 24 convictions in these cases. Yeah.
But you've helped in every single one doing something.
Well, I did the reporting I did. I'm grateful for all these, and as a matter of faith, with me, I believe God's hand's been involved in these cases. So.
I believe that too.
Yeah.
I believe that too.
Yeah.
And so, with that, I'm glad that we are friends.
This has been a great friendship.
That you
really
have been a pesky redhead.
I have. Not much red left.
Reporter that my mom says all the time, and that she's cautious every time you call.
She thinks she hears me typing.
Right.
The keyboards have gotten better. The keyboards have gotten better. She doesn't hear me nearly as much anymore.
But I'm glad to know that we continue and we continue supporting each other.
Yeah, it's been
and what
great.
we do. You've
You
been
want to say
helping
anything
us
about
with
your
the institute.
Yeah, want to talk about the Books and Lemuria Books
Well, I'll
Institute
just
real
say
quick?
that I'm happy that we have the Medgar Murray Evers Institute. I am executive director of it, and we are working for positive intergenerational change, for racial justice and equality, and it's really going on the strategy, the vision, and the actions of my parents, and going out, but to partner with you.
We're working together on some stuff, and then on top of that, the nonprofit that I started, the Mississippi Center for Investigative Reporting, is obviously dedicated to promoting investigative reporting, and goodness knows we need more investigative reporting, especially here in Mississippi, because newsrooms here have just been decimated, and newsrooms can't afford an investigative reporter, and so we're trying to provide that investigative reporting for those newsrooms so they can utilize it.
Well, I'm gonna, on behalf of so many.
Yeah.
Thank you for the truth telling.
Thank you.
Because we have to speak truth to power.
Yeah.
To empower, but also to reveal what was and was not fake news.
Oh, absolutely.
And
Back
go
then,
forward.
there was a lot of fake news back then. And the other part of that is, I've always felt this way, that before you have justice, you got to have truth.
That's right.
And even if you can't get justice, if it's say too late or whatever circumstances, you can at least have truth.
Truth, courage, and hope.
Absolutely. Well, thanks. This
you.
was a wonderful chat together. And let me ask John, did you want to send us out? John Evans, owner of beloved Lemuria here. I'm going to pop his head in here.
Justice, truth,
And hope.
and hope. I think that's what y'all brought us tonight. Two special people sharing memories. And it's a bright moment, a special moment for Lemuria. And hopefully we will have live events soon. And try to keep more things going on. Thank you very much for sharing.
Thanks,
Thank
John.
you. Thank you so much.